had framed it for the last, couple months, that this is the single most important offseason in the history of this franchise. You've been to the mountaintop, and you've fallen short in consecutive years, both in dramatic fashion. One blowing the largest Game 7 lead in the history of the NBA, and the other Game 7 losing by 30-plus, against the Oklahoma City Thunder.
The team who ends up winning it all.
Right. And Jokic now turning 30 is officially going to be in the back half of his prime. He's been in the front portion of his prime for the last 5 or 6 years. You're now officially entering the back half of it. And if there was ever a time in the history of the franchise to operate in a different way that acknowledged the importance of this window of time, now would be it. And they're not. And not only are they not,
they're playing it safe.
They are playing it so safe to the degree that I am disturbed looking at these decisions through the lens of Nikola Jokic and one of the 15 greatest basketball players of all time.
You don't like the move. You don't like the move with Ben Tenzer. You don't like the move with John Wallace. You don't like that we don't have just one general manager in the office sitting in one seat.
This is weird. This is very strange. And Josh Kroenke acknowledged it. He was asked by a buddy of mine, Brian Blackburn.
Unorthodox, right?
Yeah, well, he said this is an abnormal situation, and Josh was like, abnormal. Okay, that's one way to phrase it. I would say unorthodox, but hey, everything about us is unorthodox. We drafted this guy, in the second round. He's our MVP.
But now you know this guy.
Correct.
And you know
Correct.
who he is and how he plays the game, and he's one of the greatest players to play the game, and yet you're not doing anything about it. You're not changing the way you think to make sure that this man is happy and satisfied and wins another championship.
Correct. And he told you, Jokic told you, literally, into a microphone, that what we have is not good enough. That was after Game 7, okay? After you fell short for a second straight year, because you can kind of talk yourself into it with a one-off situation, but when you get bounced in the second round in consecutive years, different ways of falling short dramatically, and your franchise player says, what we have isn't good enough to win, and your response to that, think about this. The on-court solution is internal. The sideline solution is internal.
Yeah.
And the GM solution is double internal in co-roles. It feels like when Bill Belichick...
Because you brought somebody back.
Yes. And it feels like when Bill Belichick had co-offensive coordinators. Like, that's strange. That's unorthodox. This is what this is. And, Phil, it's to the point where they're asked, well, who will answer the phones? They're like, well, either one of us. You can call us both. It goes, hey, if there's a decision that has to be made and you guys disagree, how will it go? And they don't have an answer. It's very strange. And so you look at these moves from the player, there's not going to be any shakeup with the roster. The coaching move is a first-timer, and that's the other thing. They're all first-time approaches. And it's impossible to have this conversation authentically and not acknowledge that it's also the cheapest route to go on all three of them.
And that's what I continue to say, and I'm going to continue to say it. That was a cheap move.
It was.
A cheap move.
All of them.
Find two guys, and you're right, all three of them. And try to get as much out of them as possible without having to pay a lot of money. That can't work. It can work sometimes, but not when you have a team that's been around, that's an older team, and you have a player like Jokic,
right? And
you're still messing around with him.
Dude,
you're playing with your food, and that can't be the case, because now what is Jokic feeling? And I know somebody on the text line right now is like, here you go, fear-mongering and being a Debbie Downer.
Nope, not going there. Not going there. It's not the day, it's not the window of time to be talking like that. I do not know how any fan of the Denver Nuggets that watched this offseason unfold can be legitimately drawing from substance on why next year's team will be better than this past year's team, which was worse than last year's team.
They talked about the margins. They talked about finding pieces. Well, how are you going to do that? Who wants to sign here? Do you have the money? You're getting into the second apron, and you say you're not scared to get there. Josh Kroenke says it, but we all know you are, because when we start to talk about the second apron, you bring up, do you want us to trade 15?
That was wild.
Almost walked out the door.
That was one of the poorest timed comments, or just the fact that it was said at all from an owner that I've ever seen, ever. And I know he's technically not the official owner.
He's the vice chairman. Is that the correct word? Vice chairman.
Yes. So, but like you talk about, because that comment, it was not a throwaway comment that was like a part of some, huge, elaborate 3-minute response that like you sort of unconsciously like wade into those waters.
Yeah.
It was super intentional. He drove the car to that direction. Yes. It wasn't like a throwaway line. It was what it was. It speaks for itself. And I have no idea why he would do that.
Well, Dante had a conspiracy theory earlier, which I thought kind of made sense. Dante, do you want to chime in real fast?
Yeah, my theory was that he was trying to like fear monger basically the fan base into like, we don't need to go into the second apron. This could be one of the consequences. And it was more just like, hey, we're not going to do the second apron. And this is why, even though those two things aren't really related much.
They're not. And so I'm glad
but
that you said that.
But in his answer, he does relate them.
Yes, he does. And I had heard Mike say that too. Some version of that.
Yeah, Mike copied that from our boy Dante.
And it's one of these things where what Dante just said was right. No, even if you went into the second apron and someone got hurt, the resolution wouldn't be trading Jokic.
Yeah, trading 15.
It doesn't make sense. And I do think that there's some merit to what Dante and Mike was saying of like, you're using it as a fear tactic to the fan base. But it's like, first of all, let me say this.
There's a lot. We opened the door for Zach.
And that's
He's
what I'm saying.
ready.
Well, there's so much here.
I know.
Phil, if there was ever a time to go into the second apron, it would be with the team that you won a championship with.
Now's the time.
If there was ever a window in the history of this franchise, and I know the aprons haven't been around, for the history of the franchise, they're very new, but like if there was ever a time to say we are going all in, it's keeping your roster together that just won a championship. So if you don't keep a championship roster together and bite the bullet going to the second apron, when would you? It doesn't really add up. It doesn't. So no, they're not going into the apron.
To me, Zach, it's like, how does Jokic feel about that? People are like, oh, he's in Serbia. He doesn't have a phone or social media. That's getting back to him. And I know as a player, words do matter. And Jokic got caught astray. Talking about a trade. Like
that was weird, man.
You should never talk about an all-star player like that you lucked out and got in the second round during a Taco Bell commercial and bring up a trade talk with 15 involved. Like, you just don't do it.
Very
Everybody
strange.
knows that.
Very strange.
It frustrated me, and some people were like, well, I'm being too dramatic, and I just say, you don't do that, man. Words hurt. They really can cut deep in professional sports.
Totally. So, and again, like I see a text saying, hey, who should we, believe, Josh Kroenke or, you goofballs? I would say this: think for yourself. Think for yourself. Don't listen to me. You write down the moves that on paper.
Yeah, get a notebook out.
Like, write it down. You've lost in the second round in consecutive years. You literally have the best player on planet Earth. The greatest basketball player alive right now plays in Denver. And it doesn't feel like, they're not meeting the moment. When your on-court solutions are the guys we have need to get better, and I'm telling you, watch this play out, because this
when
is
he says
so
get better, you're talking about the young players, right? The internal players.
Yes, I'm talking about Pickett. I'm talking about Strother. I'm talking about Peyton Watson. It is so easy to hear Ben Tenzer and Jon Wallace, and this doesn't have to do with those guys specifically. Like, it's not about like David Adelman specifically, like Wallace, Tenzer. But when you add it up in aggregate and you look at like the totality of the very, and I'm going to say this, and I said it a couple weeks ago, it feels very Monfort-esque. Everything is